Hello, my name is Dave Gunter and welcome. We're going to talk a little bit about assessment models, audit models, assessment models, analysis in general for the OT cybersecurity space. And we're going to gear this towards the operation and maintenance team. First, let's talk about assessment models and what they mean and how they work out. So you have risk assessment for cybersecurity. That can be an assessment that looks at the consequence of compromise, the risk. You also have a maturity assessment. Are you doing what you say you're doing based on industry practices and your own practices? We're also going to look at vulnerability assessments. That's another one, assessing your vulnerabilities. We're going to talk a little bit about audits, internal and external, what they mean. And then we'll also dive a little bit into attack analysis. If you're going to look at a particular vulnerability, look at a threat vector, you're going to look at a threat actor, and you're going to run through a series of vulnerability types and map that out. There's particular standards and structures you want to follow through. None of these things are created equal, and these things are done for different purposes. So let's talk about, number one, an attack analysis. The attack analysis is done when you typically want to do forensics on a previous attack, or you want to model a particular scenario that from a risk assessment you felt was viable. You would pick the attack vector, you would pick the threat actor, you would go through the process of modeling what vulnerabilities could be suspect, could they use to weaponize against you, and you would go through a long series of chains. There's some great published standards out there on how to do that attack analysis. Let's talk a little bit about a risk assessment. Now, a risk assessment is an interesting thing because it can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, but unless it understands the consequence of compromise, and what I mean by that is, what does a bad day look like for the operations and maintenance team? What systems can they not survive without? They are down, out of the water. So you really need to kind of put that it's very similar to a process hazard study, a true risk assessment. It's done to the 62443-3-2 methodology. We all know it's out there, it's published, it's a great reference. Let's talk about the maturity assessment. The maturity assessment is looking, and this, I've seen many maturity assessments, they look at your governance, and they look at your practice, and they look at, are you doing what you say you're doing? It's very similar to a 62443-2-1 assessment, where the topics kind of overlap. Do you manage your assets? Is your data categorized? And there's a host of questions that goes underneath that. And then whether you do it and whether you have it written, that's going to be the key. Are you mature in your organization and how you proceed? It's very similar to an audit from the IT folks or audit on OT. When you talk through, what does that mean? Are we following our practice? Do we do what we say we do? That's very similar. But it's not done in the term audit. It's a maturity assessment. So all of these audit and assessment and analysis type have their space. What you really need to do is, after you've done that first assessment, it can be any one of these above with the exception of the attack analysis or even the attack analysis. I'll take that back. You need to take a step back and say, what have I missed? What am I missing? Was that one assessment all-encompassing, covering everything? You'll find most likely it's not. So know what you have or have had done, and then know what you need. That's going to be the key to having a quality assessment. Also, make sure the assessment has been done by a firm that has done very similar assessments on a large scale across the board, and they understand and they have that operational context. If it's a consequence analysis or a risk assessment, they understand what the plant has been through. They understand what trips mean. They understand how long. They get it. Make sure that you kind of sort through that field. There's a lot of great qualified folks out there. I'm sure you'll find one. So that's a little bit about the assessment, analysis, and audit models for the operation and maintenance team. Know what you have, and then figure out the gaps and know what you need. So until next time, join us.